Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Always exciting to dive into some earnings calls.
Yeah, this is one I've been looking forward to, Rubrik's Q3 2025 earnings call transcript, a company I think a lot of people are watching closely.
Absolutely. They're right at the forefront of this whole shift to cloud security and data resilience. And of course, we always want to look at the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers tell a story.
And the conversations between those executives and the analysts, those can be super insightful.
Yeah, like, are they facing challenges? Are they glossing over things?
Reading between the lines.
Exactly. So much to unpack. And you know what? They just crossed a major milestone.
Oh, yeah.
$1 billion in subscription annual recurring revenue. 1.04 billion to be exact.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby, but, hitting a big number like that doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing from here.
It's not a guarantee of future success.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are some of the headline numbers that popped out to you?
Well, for starters, they beat earnings expectations, which is always a good sign. EPS came in at negative $0.21.
Right.
Going in.
Still not profitable.
Not yet, but Wall Street was expecting negative 0.40, so a step in the right direction.
So exceeding those expectations, a good sign. Their subscription revenue also saw a pretty impressive jump, 55% year over year to over $221 million.
Yeah, top-line growth looks pretty healthy.
Okay, so strong revenue growth, but, profitability, that's where the rubber really meets the road, right?
Absolutely, because anyone can grow a business if they spend enough money. The real trick is to grow profitably, and that's what investors really want to see.
And that's what analysts are going to be grilling these executives on during the Q&A.
Oh, for sure. One analyst, Saket Kalia from Barclays, really zeroed in on this and said, look,
Yeah.
last quarter you talked about normalizing for typical seasonality in fiscal 26. Can you just remind us how we should think about the shape of the year for subscription ARR?
So basically, he's saying don't get too excited about one good quarter. How did Rubrik CFO Kiran Chowdhury respond to that?
He didn't exactly dismiss the concern. He said they're expecting more normalized quarterly seasonality and subscription ARR in fiscal 2026.
So reading between the lines, it sounds like they're acknowledging that this level of growth might not be sustainable.
Exactly. It's a bit of a reality check and makes you wonder, are investors pricing that in yet?
Yeah, that's always the million-dollar question, but it's not all doom and gloom. Their subscription ARR contribution margin also saw a huge improvement. It jumped 1,100 basis points year over year.
Yeah, now that is impressive. It means they're getting more efficient at generating revenue.
But is that sustainable? I mean, could this just be a one-time blip?
That's a fair question. Chowder did say those margin improvements were driven by top-line scale, operational efficiencies, and investments in sales and marketing and R&D. However, we expect these drivers to continue.
So he's trying to reassure everyone that they're not just slashing costs to juice those margins.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to find that balance between investing for growth and becoming more profitable.
Which is always the challenge for high-growth companies.
For sure. And speaking of sales, another analyst raised a really interesting point about their customer wins in the cloud.
Oh, yeah, because you'd think companies would just stick with what their cloud provider offers. Why complicate things with a third-party solution?
It seems counterintuitive, right? That was Saket Kalia again. And CEO Bipul Sinha's response really highlights Rubrik's overall strategy, he said, and I'm quoting here.
Yeah.
We are the only vendor who can provide the data security posture management with the cyber recovery. This is why we are winning in the cloud. We are winning against the next-gen vendors, and we are winning against the legacy vendors.
So they're going all in on this idea of a unified platform for cyber resilience covering all your data wherever it lives.
It's their key differentiator, and he even gave a specific example.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned a Fortune 500 insurance company that actually ditched their native cloud backup solution and switched to Rubrik specifically for this reason.
Okay, a real-world example always helps. But one win doesn't mean they've conquered the market.
Of course not. We need to see consistent success over time, and that's where questions about market share and win rates come into play.
And I'm sure analysts were all over that. Did anyone specifically bring that up?
Brad Zelnick from Deutsche Bank asked about that, wanting to know if there were any insights into win rates or where those gains were coming from.
Did Sinham give him a straight answer?
He was a bit vague. He reiterated that their Zero Trust platform was helping them win against both legacy and next-gen providers, but didn't give any hard numbers on those win rates.
So a classic case of, we're doing great, but we can't tell you exactly how great.
Pretty standard for an earnings call, but let's not forget about their big move into the generative AI space with the Annapurna platform.
Ah, yes, that was a big announcement.
And Fatima Boulani from Citi was curious about it. She asked, what is the early customer feedback on Annapurna, and what did the initial pricing and packaging conversations look like?
So basically, she's trying to figure out, is there real demand for this? And how are they going to make money from it?
Exactly. And Sinha's response was interesting. He emphasized that Annapurna is a multi-year strategy for us.
So he's acknowledging that it's early days.
Yeah. And he highlighted the platform's secure data embedding capabilities and its API-first design.
But when it came to pricing and packaging,
He was pretty vague. He said they would be experimenting with those aspects.
so reading between the lines, it sounds like they're still figuring things out when it comes to monetizing Annapurna.
It's definitely something to watch in the coming quarters, and investors are going to want to see some concrete progress there.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on the financials and some of the key questions analysts were raising. But let's dive deeper into those analyst discussions in the next part.
Especially around those potential sales challenges and what it all means for Rubrik's future.
Stay tuned.
So, picking up where we left off, one thing that really jumped out at me from this call was this tension between Rubrik's ambitious growth goals and kind of the realities of the market right now.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to have their cake and eat it. Too high growth and profitability at the same time.
Exactly. And the analysts definitely picked up on that during the Q&A.
Oh, yeah. They were poking around trying to figure out if Rubrik can actually pull it off.
The one exchange that I thought was really interesting was about their data security posture management offering DSPM.
Yeah, that's a relatively new product for them, right?
Right. Fatima Boulani from Citi asked if DSPM was helping to shorten sales cycles or, really moving the needle in terms of pipeline.
So basically, is this new product making it easier and faster to close deals?
Exactly, because that would be a huge win for them if it was, what did they say?
Yeah, what'd they say?
Sinha, the CEO, he acknowledged that our DSPM business doubled quarter over quarter in Q3, so that's a good sign they're adding customers quickly.
Yeah, that's impressive growth.
But when it came to the impact on sales cycles, Chaudhry, the CFO, he kind of pumped the brakes a little bit. He said, it's still very early, as you know. DSPM is a small part of our business.
So the jury's still out on whether DSPM is going to be a major growth driver anytime soon.
Right, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. They need the product to be more mature to attract a ton of customers. But they also need a ton of customers to justify investing more in the product.
Yeah, classic startup dilemma.
And this whole transition to a cloud-based business model adds another layer of complexity to the mix.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because their revenue is increasingly tied to these subscription services with shorter contract cycles.
And remember Bilani's question about the impact of consumption-based pricing on free cash flow?
Yeah, she was basically saying, hey, are these shorter contracts going to make it harder for you to generate cash?
Exactly. And Chaudhry admitted that there are headwinds from shorter contract and invoicing cycles associated with our cloud and SaaS products. And he said they expect this trend to continue at least modestly into next year.
So it's not a crisis, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially when you consider that their free cash flow was already negative $126 million for the first 9 months of this fiscal year.
Yeah, that's not chump change.
It's like they're building the plane while they're flying it. High risk, high reward.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to this whole question of sustainable growth.
Can they keep up this pace?
Right. Kash Raiman from Goldman Sachs had a really pointed question about this. He asked, is this like a replacement cycle where you rip and replace legacy, and once that's done, things slow down?
So he's basically saying, is their current success just a temporary bump from replacing old technology?
Exactly. And Sinha pushed back pretty hard on that idea.
Oh, yeah.
He said, so the first thing is we have transformed the backup and recovery market into a cyber resilience market. So his argument is that they're not just taking share from existing players, they're creating a whole new market.
They're expanding the pie, not just grabbing a bigger slice.
Right. Very ambitious, and that's where their whole platform play really comes into focus.
Yeah, they're not just a point solution. They want to be the one-stop shop for all your data security needs.
Exactly. And Sinha doubled down on that. He said, we are the only vendor who can provide the data security posture management with the cyber recovery, which is becoming table stakes because of generative AI. This is why we are winning in the cloud.
So they're betting big on this combination of data security recovery and AI integration to fuel their next phase of growth.
It's a compelling story for sure, but it remains to be seen if they can actually deliver on that promise.
And let's not forget, they're facing some stiff competition out there.
Oh, yeah. There are some big players in this space and a lot of hungry startups nipping at their heels.
So they can't afford to rest on their laurels.
One thing that caught my attention was an observation from John DiFucci from Guggenheim Securities. He noted that anecdotally, we are seeing a lot more activity with Rubrik out there, with VARs, with GSIs. Is that a conscious effort on your part, or is this just, again, better demand in the market?
So he's basically asking, are they getting more aggressive with their partnerships to drive sales?
Exactly. And Sinha confirmed that yes, they are ramping up their engagement with VARs and GSIs. Those are value-added resellers and global system integrators.
So they're realizing they can't go it alone. They need those partners to help them reach more customers.
And it's not just about selling more licenses. Sinha also talked about how these partnerships are moving from an infrastructure discussion to a risk mitigation discussion.
So they're trying to position themselves as more strategic advisors, not just technology vendors.
Yeah. That's a smart move, but it also requires a different level of expertise and engagement they need to really understand their customers' business needs and show how Rubrik's solutions can address those needs.
It all sounds very promising, but the
Yeah.
question remains, can they actually execute on this vision?
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We've got these great financial numbers, this bold vision for the future, but also a whole bunch of challenges and uncertainties along the way.
It's a classic high-growth, high-risk scenario.
Exactly. And in the next part, let's unpack that vision a bit more, especially their plans for the generative AI market and what it all means for you, the listener.
Because this isn't just about Rubrik's success, it's about how these technologies are going to impact all of us.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we spent a good chunk of time looking at Rubrik's impressive financial performance, but also some of those question marks around long-term growth.
And of course, their bold move into the generative AI space, trying to position themselves as the leading data security platform for that whole wave of new applications.
So let's zoom in on that for a second.
Yeah.
What does this AI play actually mean for our listeners out there?
Well, it's crucial to understand that this isn't just some buzzword. Generative AI is already transforming how businesses operate, and that creates both huge opportunities and some serious risks.
Yeah, and Rubrik is trying to be right at the center of it all.
Exactly. They're betting that companies will need robust data security solutions to manage all the sensitive data that these AI models require.
And remember what Seen has said about generative AI being the most disruptive technology we've seen in the past 2 decades? He's not exaggerating the potential impact here.
Right, and their Annapurna platform is their attempt to address this emerging need.
But remember how analysts were pushing for specifics on Annapurna's pricing and packaging?
Yeah, and Sino was pretty vague.
Super vague. He just kept saying they'd be experimenting, which makes me wonder if they even have a clear monetization strategy yet.
That's a valid concern. Are they leading the market or just reacting to it? And can they make Annapurna profitable without pricing out potential customers?
Tough questions, and let's not forget they're dealing with all this while also trying to manage this tricky transition to a cloud-based business model.
Right, shorter contract cycles, pressure on free cash flow, it's a lot to juggle.
And they're facing intense competition from both those big established players and a whole slew of agile startups snapping at their heels.
It's a crowded market. They can't just rest on their laurels. They need to constantly innovate and stay one step ahead.
So many moving pieces, strong financials, a build vision, but also potential pitfalls everywhere.
Almost like a snapshot of the entire tech industry right now. Rapid change, high stakes, and a whole lot of uncertainty.
It makes you wonder, what stood out to you most from this deep dive? What are you going to be watching for in Rubrik's next earnings call?
That's the million-dollar question. Can they keep up this growth? Will their AI strategy pay off? Is this the beginning of something truly special or just another flash in the pan?
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing's for sure, Rubrik is definitely a company worth keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Rubrik's Q3 earnings call. It was a fascinating one.
Until next time.